Hey everyone, my name is Patrick, owner of Denali Racing and Performance in New Jersey, and I have next to me is my 2007 GMC Envoy Denali. This started life as my daily. It looked great, drove great, just the engine constantly ate lifters, so it was kind of time to either sell it or turn it into a race truck. In reality, I tried to sell it, but I didn't get too many great offers. I did fix it, but I think the issues with these plagued it enough to where I couldn't sell it for much. So I guess I wanted to kind of knock off something on my bucket list and do drag and drives. And I thought it'd be pretty cool to do this. It's different. It kind of suits me. I'm different. And so I decided to start looking at getting cages for it, getting a different engine that I can have a little more power put to it, different transmission. This came with a 4L60. That definitely was not going to stay in there. So I started out with a roll cage, and looking to have one kind of pre-bent was kind of a risk because I could have screwed up on the measurements. They could have. The bender I had or borrowed was kind of a manual bender, so that wasn't going to fly with chromoly. And I wanted chromoly for the weight and a little bit of the strength. So I did some research and found out that a 67 Chevelle, Chevy Malibu, their roll cages that they made for them, kind of a pre-order kit, had the same dimensions that I needed for a main hoop. Turns out some guy was selling one on Facebook Marketplace, so I hit him up, went down, picked it up. It was like $500, kind of a long shot. And I'm using like 90% of it in here. I think it was like an S&W cage. It had the one-piece halo for the forward portion. It's something common coming out of the shop like that. I wound up not using that, but I used most of the bars to do it. And I kind of made an 850 cage. And then I get to the rear, and it had an 8.6 or an 8.5, 8.6 factory one. Pretty decent, I think, would have held up for the power. But then kind of getting into it, I realized it had steel axle tubes with an aluminum center. And I didn't want to take that risk of it, kind of twisting an axle tube or whatever. So I decided not to stick with that and stick with none of the factory rear suspension. So I kind of was like at a crossroads there. And then it came to like safety. Do I stick with an 850 cage? Do I feel safe in that? And I honestly didn't. So I decided to keep going, and I made it a 25.5 chassis with a funny car cage. And why it's a 25.5 and not a 25.3? It's because some of the tube that's in there is mild steel. It's spec to the certification for SFI, but it's still mild steel. So it will pass cert at a 750 or 25.5 cert. But I didn't have the bender. I didn't want to go out and try to borrow a friend's or try to do that for chromoly, especially for like portions of the funny car cage, stuff like that. So I feel it's safe enough. Obviously, it meets the specifications, so I'm not too concerned about it. But it's that added level of security that I kind of wanted. I have a family, so I really don't want to get hurt doing this stuff. I just want to have fun. So once that kind of snowballed out, I got a rear end. It's a Rhodes 9-inch fabricated housing. I made all the parallel 4-link stuff. I ordered a kit, kind of put it all together. It has a wishbone in it. It has similar to the mid or no prep 4-link brackets. So they're in here. And originally it was just going to be 2-wheel drive. And that was kind of the idea, the goal for weight and stuff like that. But I always kind of thought, like, in the back of my mind, do things that would make it a little easier to make it all-wheel drive. Because that was kind of like my goal, was to have a pretty quick all-wheel drive car. And then Cletus came out. He did his first kind of all-wheel drive shootout. And then he kind of posted he's going to do a big one in October. So that kind of got the spark back in for me to do this. And so now it is completely all-wheel drive. Actually has a 1994 Chevy 1500 front axle in it. So independent axle. That's an 8 1/4 ring gear. The CVs were kind of difficult. So I basically got everything out of the front end, or CVs and the rear and the front diff out of a 1500 Chevy. But at the time, I already went ahead and decided. I purchased off Facebook again, a 2010 Chevy Camaro front end. The control arms, the spindle, the struts, everything, brakes, everything. So basically I got driver and passenger front suspension for a Camaro. And I made it fit. And then we decided to go to all-wheel drive. So the choice was, how do I approach this? Well, not too many people might know this, but the front wheel bearings are the same as a Cadillac CTS in those years. So 09 to 11 or 12. And they come splined. Even though it's a Camaro hub, it is still splined because it's the same part number for a Cadillac CTS, being all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive. So I looked at that. I said, okay, well, the 1500 CV axle has a 33 spline outer, and it's much larger diameter. The Cadillac CTS and slash Camaro, even though Camaro is not front-wheel drive, had a 30 spline. So obviously that wasn't going to work. And I could have custom axles made, but then, you know, that's time and a whole lot of money. So I started kind of experimenting. So I took apart the original 1500 CV axle. I took the outer CV off and found that in between the CVs, the steel axle shaft itself has a 35 spline. It's about a 1-inch shaft, right? But it's 35 spline. And that spline allows the outer CV to lock in to the remainder of it. So I started researching companies that make CV parts, and I found, so I needed a 35 spline inner and a 30 spline outer, because the Cadillac CTS is a 30 spline. So I found a website that has them and actually listed what the spline count was on the outer or inner portion and actual hub portion of it, but it didn't tell me diameter. So it was kind of like a shot in the dark. I ordered one, and it turns out it fit perfectly. The length is perfect. Even the length of the original 1500 CV was perfect. So I guess I got lucky. However, for the Camaro side, the lower control arms weren't going to work. So those are custom. And instead of having 2 individual control arms, it's actually 1 for that. The steering none of the suspension is factory from the Envoy. It had half strut towers, they got ripped off. The whole lower suspension, I mean, you're talking probably 300-400 pounds and all that gone. So, you know, now also too, it has a 25.5 under chassis. So all that goes forward. So it gives me a lot of areas to attach to. It made it real easy for the front diff. Even, lo and behold, I didn't realize this, but I spaced the lower bars that run the length of the chassis. I spaced them perfectly the width of the mounting tabs on the, on the front diff. So it literally just kind of fell right into place. Even an aftermarket oil pan deep sump will fit. So there really isn't that much fabrication to get it in there. So I got pretty lucky. And really lucky with the CV stuff. We're running strange outers, strange struts and coilovers. And the top portion, since I made the forward bars go forward and with a little bit of support, I'm able to just kind of do my own strut plate, strut hat. So, and then if I want to adjust it, all I'm doing is I CNC machine a plate with that measurement in it. So like if I want to change the caster angle, you know, it's fixed. So then I just kind of bolt in a new plate. So it kind of makes it easier. So it was kind of like, it was never really supposed to get this far. It was only supposed to be an 850 two-wheel drive. Then it was a, 7-second two-wheel drive, and now it's 7-second all-wheel drive. The power plant in there is an LS 6-liter cast iron block. I have an aluminum block for it. Just not too confident in the OEM aluminum block. I got a good deal on a used, decent cast iron block, so we're running that. Fortunate enough to be sponsored by Force Induction Turbos. So they gladly sent us 2 turbos, 2 76mm turbos. And Brian Tooley Racing is with us too. They sent us their Trinity intake with valve covers and fuel rail. So we're real happy with that. I'm running methanol only for the track. As it being a drag and drive, obviously it's going to be a dual fuel system, so we're going to have a regular tank in the back. I was going to kind of go to the race gas route, but then I would have to have an intercooler inside, being I have the Trinity intake. So we're sticking with that. We're doing methanol. I think it's just the Lord's fuel, right? It's kind of a lot easier to start dealing with all that stuff than having intercoolers, air to water. So I decided with the weight, it being right now as it sits, there's not much in it, but it's 2235. So we're going to estimate about 3,500 pounds. So with that, I kind of think, let's just not try to add this weight. It's bad enough I might have to balance a little weight to kind of make it even left to right. The transmission is a Turbo 400, and that's kind of where this story started with Denial Racing and Performance. Obviously, we named the truck Denial, which is kind of cool because we just reordered the same badging and just moved a couple letters around and called it Denial. And with that, I kind of wanted to have the best possible transmission performance parts without spending tens of thousands of dollars on a name brand transmission or having somebody build one. So I started developing my own parts, and that's led to a huge success here, being that I own and operate my own CNC job shop. Now, primarily, we just make the components that we sell. So I'm pretty fortunate in that. With the Cletus all-wheel drive shootout that's coming up, we did enter, but we just didn't get picked. With Sick Week, that's kind of still a toss-up, still up in the air whether we're going to do that or not. At this point, it being all-wheel drive, there's a little bit more to do. There's a time crunch here, which it can be done. It just would be my job from here on out, and I really just don't want to do that to myself. I have other obligations and stuff I want to do. So, but it's turning out great. I really can't complain. With the tires are actually, these are mock-ups on there. This is, they're both front and rears are going to be, I think, a 10.5 tire. And this is they're 15s. I'm going to run 15s. And I think I'm going to run whatever, strange brakes, motion brakes, whatever I'm going to run. I haven't picked them out yet. So this is an 8-inch wide wheel with a 5-inch back spacing, and that is a 10-inch wheel with a 5-inch back spacing as well. So there's kind of a balance you have to choose there with the all-wheel drive. Now, the OEM GM gear is a 342. The closest we can get in a pro gear or any gear, I think, is a 340 gear for the 9-inch. And in doing the math, right, you think, oh, it's not going to work. Well, long story short, basically, to sum it up, the math says that in order for them to be even, the rear tire would have to be 1/8 of an inch in diameter less than the front. You might get that way with just the roll out of each tire. So we're going to leave it, see what it does. I don't think there's anything we could really do to change that. We could change the front diff to like a 373 and get it more common, but I want to see what this does because it's kind of the drivability, it being twin turbo. I don't want to beat it up too much on the starting line, so I'm going to see what it does. I mean, it is all-wheel drive now, so we have options. We have room to play with it. So again, mostly none of the original interiors in there, except the dash, which got gutted. That doesn't weigh that much. The cool thing about the door panels, which I haven't done yet, I don't want it to look like a sheet metal door panel. So what I did is I took a high definition picture of the door panel itself and had it printed off. I wish I had it here. I'd put it on the camera, but I had it printed off to scale, and I'm going to take that sticker basically and put it on an aluminum panel and then screw it in there. So when you kind of glance inside the car, it's like, oh, it's got door panels, but they're just a sticker. It's just a picture. The rear doors, I think right now are still going to work. We want to cut a little bit more weight out of it. The body is where the weight is. But it's kind of time, and then I realized like some of the front stuff I can probably cut out. But the time and then put half the weight back, is it worth it? Eventually, but not right now. I'd love to cut weight elsewhere. And again, I think the transmission, it is a Turbo 400, getting back to that. And 3-speed, no overdrive. The transfer case is something I'm building custom here. Again, since I have a CNC machine shop, I'm going to make the actual case itself. But instead of buying kind of quick change gears or trying to buy some gears from FTI or SCS, I think, what I did is I purchased a used NP205. And I kind of like just Frankenstein, right? I cut it all up, got rid of low gear, did some machine work on the intermediate gear that was in it. It's not going to be selectable. It's just going to be 1-to-1 all the time, 4-wheel drive. And I was able to, I have it all in CAD. I was able to design it and make it all work. So it's like 2 scale. I even modeled the gears, everything that I know I need is modeled. So there really is really no guesswork in completing that. So it's going to be custom for me. The drive shaft's going to be pretty normal. Nothing special about that. The front drive shaft, rear I think it's going to be carbon possibly. I didn't get to that point yet. Close. We're getting close. So there's a lot of cool things that I'm doing with this that are where I'm learning and experiencing and having the ability to do what I can with this machine shop. So it's pretty sweet. Yeah, so I think hopefully, I know we're going to be rolling it out full time in 2025. And I'm real excited about that. I'm real excited to see what it does. Can't wait to do some testing. ECU wise, it's going to be a Holley Dominator. And again, basically, I think I'm building the headers too. We're going to do the flanges here. They're kind of mocked up, just kind of getting to that point. You'll see some clips in here of some older stuff that I've done so far. Kind of waiting to get the new stuff done. We are making products as we're doing it too, so it's a little hectic. We don't want to film too much. But as it sits, it's about 70% done, and I'm looking forward to getting it out there. And it's always the nickel and dime stuff that take the longest. So for glass too, just trying to add some stuff in here. It's basically going to be the stock glass for now. There's a lot of weight there, but it would kind of trash this truck if I did, like, you know, tried to make some Lexan back window and side windows. I don't know. Eventually, when I get to that point, when I want to start shaving pounds here and there to get it a little bit faster. So, but you can always add more power. So that's where I'm at right now. So I think that's pretty much it. Again, I'm real excited. I can't wait to get it rolling. And but I think a lot of the excitement too is actually figuring this stuff out and building it. And it's been a wild experience thus far. And that in the short amount of time that I've been working on it, it's made a lot of progress. So also too, it will have, you know, typical radiator, typical stuff that you're going to have. None of the amenities you'd want or you would get in a Denali like this. Absolutely none. You will have power windows. That's it. But yeah, so it's a pretty cool challenge. It's something I've always wanted to do, the drag and drives, and also build something pretty cool. So I hope you guys like it. Thanks for watching.